Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, to everyone who's joining us. I'm Rugaba John Paul from the Sanyin podcast, the host of this amazing discussion. With me, I'm joined by the amazing, beautiful Juliana. Is how we, the African creatives, both on the continent and the diaspora, can use our works to transform the African narrative. As we all know, the African narrative that has been told throughout the years is one of war, famine, disease. But we believe there's a lot of positivity that the African continent can show. And through the emerging technology and media personalities, through our work such as podcasts, we have a role to play in transforming and redefining the African narrative at large. I didn't come alone. My panelists, Juliana and soon Tosin, will join me in this amazing discussion. I would also want to thank the people at APVA for giving us this opportunity and platform. And I'll invite Miss Juliana to come and give her opening remarks and tell you what she does. Juliana, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. This is Juliana Nthenya from Kenya. Juliana is a graduate with bachelor's degree in education, linguistics, and literature. Apart from being a teacher, I am a creative writer, a content creator. I'm a podcast. I am the host and founder of Crown of Glory podcast. I am a mentor. I am a public speaker. And today we are going to narrow down to the cape that I wear of being a podcaster and a voiceover artist. Thank you.
Nice, nice, nice. So you're basically, doing many things. Nice, nice, amazing. The first question I'll pose to you, Juliana, is how would you describe the current African narrative, especially when you watch maybe the foreign media, or maybe you go online? What is being told about Africa?
I'll say that Africa is depicted as a continent beset by poverty, conflict, and diseases. And this has led to a negative perception of the region and its people, including corruption, conflict. And that is what the foreign media houses has brought out the limelight and shown the whole world that Africa is a dark continent. There's nothing good in Africa. Yeah, and there's nothing that can be found in Africa. Yeah, that is the current African narrative that is sold out to the whole world.
Nice. And do you have those examples, maybe of that story or that thing you read, or maybe on social media, and you're like, nah, these guys are just over exaggerating the negative stories about Africa?
Yes, I can narrow down to the story of Libya, the Libya conflict of 2011, where NATO was launching a campaign against the Gaddafi regime. And we really know what happened. And the news sites, that is, the news sites from the foreign countries, they look as if they are from Africa, but the sponsors come from the Western countries. The news sites from the anti-government coalition, including Al Jazeera, Qatar, primarily reported a narrative supporting the victorious rebels. And that is one of the examples that the picture that was drawn out there was really bad. And yet that is not what was happening at the background.
Okay. So then someone may ask, why Africa? Why are we having this negative stereotype against us in the media or through, other works? Why isn't our story being told as it is? Is it a case of journalistic error or just we not having enough voices on ground? According to you, why is it so?
I'll first begin by saying Africans don't like coming out and giving out their own stories. Many of the stories that are given out they don't come from the respective people. And so our stories are said out there, of which most of them are not true. And let us narrow down to the NGOs. Remember when the non-government organizations came down here in Africa? They came in the name of helping the Africans, and they gave out that picture that Africans are poor. And when you go to the social media platforms, you'll notice that most of the pictures that circulate online, you'll find houses that are built of mud, children that are malnourished. And that is the kind of picture that gets in the mind of people in the whole world. So I would say our journalists don't choose the positive side of the story. Remember, these journalists are employed by the big media companies who are funded by the Western African countries, and they only report what is supposed to be heard by the Westerns.
Okay, so basically you're saying that the journalists who cover Africa have another agenda that is set to them by the employers.
Yes, yes. As you see, Africa is depicted, to be full of poverty. We can't make it on our own. We depend on those Western countries. So in the fear of being unemployed and getting fired, they just have to do what the employers want them to do.
Someone will then ask you, Juliana, then what is the real African narrative? What is the real African story? What is that you want the world to know about Africa?
Thank you, Rugaba, for such a good question. What I would want the world to know about Africa, now that I'm an African, is that in Africa, we have great resources. We have people who are intelligent. When you first look at the word Africa and dig deep in history, you'll notice that the meaning of Africa is the mother of nature. When you look in the Bible, from history, archaeology, and all that, you'll notice that the first man came from Africa. So Africa is the mother of human nature, When you go back to the colonial era, you find out that the Europeans came out all the way from their countries to Africa to colonize Africa. Why? Because there were great resources, there are minerals. So you can't just say that in Africa, people are poor, in Africa, everything is dark. No, there is light in Africa. And at the moment, people say that Africa is rising. There's another narrative that is coming up that Africa is rising. When the sun rises, it means that at a point, it had to set. And if it had to set, it means that at one time, it rose, meaning that the kind of sunset that was seen in Africa, one time there was a bright sun shining on Africa, meaning that all what is seen in Western countries was once or is still here in Africa. Yeah, so Africa is a bright continent. Everything that is found in all those countries is found here. And that is seen by what is happening today through our social media platforms, through the podcasts. You can actually see people who are coming out, giving out their real stories. We have intellectuals who are abroad doing very well in their careers. Those are a great and good representatives of what we have back here home. Thank you.
So let's now go to the main question of the discussion. How can you, as Juliana, a podcaster, a voiceover artist, and a poet, use your voice or use your works to promote the African narrative?
Thank you for that question. As a podcaster, as a voiceover artist, the first thing I will do is to tell my story. I will tell my story. I won't wait for anybody else to, describe who I am, tell people what I do. I have been in Africa. I've been in one of the African countries, for example, Kenya, and I know how life back here home is. So the first step to do is to come out boldly and tell them that back home, this is what is happening, this is what is happening, and this is what is happening. Secondly, narrowing down to my career as a teacher, interacting with students, and doing literature, hosting guests who discuss African books. That will help bring out the intelligence and show the world how we have intelligent people in Africa. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Is there maybe a content creator or a creative that maybe, let's say, you look up to, who's trying to maybe promote the African narrative in a way that you feel represents Africa?
Yes, I will just narrow down to Wode Maya from Ghana. Wode Maya is the Ghana's leading YouTuber, and he took the initiative of telling the African story, and I really look up to what he does. Apart from that, back here in Kenya, I look up to Kaleche Momo, what she does, and there are many more. I have very many people whom I look up to, people who have stood out and decided to air out their views through their voices and not to be shut down.
Nice, Juliana. I like your take on the issues. But someone may ask, okay, the African narrative has this negative stereotype. We, the creatives, can use our platforms, our voices to to give the real African story. But then, as you as a fellow creative, what challenges do you think that we may face as we're trying to promote the African narrative? What challenges can we face? Or can we expect going forward?
Thank you so much, Rugaba, for such a good question. There are very many challenges that I personally face as a content creator, as a podcaster, and as a voiceover artist. And the first challenge, I would say, it's competition. Before we began this meeting, we were just talking about collaborating and looking at the podcasters who have been able to collaborate. And we saw that there are very few podcasters who have been able to come up together and, collaborated. Why? Africans tend to be mean. I'm sorry to say that. Everybody wants to be proud of their work. Everybody wants to be heard that it's me who did this. And competition comes and in between or amongst ourselves, and it brings us down. I just wish as podcasters and as content creators, we can uphold each other and collaborate, and we'll be able to rise. In Kiswahili, we say back in Kenya, chanda kimoja kivishi pete, and umoja ni nguvu, utengano ni udhaifu. Unity. As podcasters, we lack unity, and that is the greatest challenge. It's not good to be envious of what your neighbor is doing because they're doing a different thing from you. They have a different vision, they have a different goal. It's good to hold each other and rise together. So I will just say the second challenge is internet. Internet is a great challenge in Africa. It is a real challenge in Africa, especially for the upcoming artists and podcasters. It's a real deal. The other thing is being internet illiterate. I understand that it's not everybody who is able to host a Zoom meeting as we are right now. It's good to admit the truth. It's not everybody who is able to, host somebody. And so it's good if, as podcasters, we pay to learn these things because we have to produce quality work. Quality work. Apart from that, narrowing down to podcasts. Remember, for a podcast, we always want to hear your voice. And as long as the sound quality is not good, your podcast won't sell, your podcast won't thrive in the market. And that means you should have funds. That is one of the greatest challenge because, for instance, I pay someone to edit my podcasts, audios, somebody to create posters. And at the end of the day, if you don't have patience, you'll realize that it's too expensive. It's too expensive. For a podcaster, that means you are selling a brand, and selling a brand is really quite expensive. So inadequate funds, it's one of the challenges. The other thing is restrictions on digital platforms by the government. The governments of some of the countries, they are really restricted. For instance, where you come from, Uganda, you know what happens back there, and you've admitted that there are very, very few podcasts. You don't have the freedom that we have here in Kenya, and we find out that that is one of the greatest challenge in Uganda. People want to do podcasts, but they can't because they fear for their lives. Another thing is cyberbullying. Cyberbullying. You find out that you create content, you post it on YouTube, you post it on Facebook, you create your own podcast, and it ends up being pulled down. Yeah, those are some of the few challenges that people face, podcasters. Thank you.
Okay, I think with the Uganda thing, it's just that how do I say it? The political part of the podcasting is quite low because for it as a sensitive topic to engage in. But yeah, there are many now podcasts coming in. But on the thing you say, the competition among we podcasters or content creators, my last question to you would be, in your opinion, how can that be solved or worked around?
I'll have to begin with the government. The government, when you look at what has happened in Kenya in the past few weeks and the past last month, you saw the maandamano. And what happened? The Gen Zs say that they were tribeless, leaderless, and nobody was accountable for what was happening. Why? Because we have the social media, and that is X. When you look at Elon Musk, he has created a very good platform for people to express themselves freely and air out their views freely. And that is what brought the Kenyan youth together. When I will begin by saying increasing cooperation, and the government to support their people, the government to support the content creators. You know, the government should also set aside some funds for these people. Yeah, they should also be included in the government budgets. The other thing is going to school as a podcaster. You need to learn the skills of interviewing people. You need to learn the skills of hosting people. You need to learn you need to learn communication skills. If you lack that, it will be so difficult for you to host people in your podcast. And you'll find out that it's actually difficult for people to listen to your podcast because they try to listen to it and it doesn't add up to anything. So I'll just say those three things. People should go to school, learn a course about podcastings. We have very many free courses online and everywhere. Pay the costs so that you may stand out. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana, for that insightful, insight that you've given us on the topics and the content creation industry. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the work you've done from the conversation we have had. And this is the part of the discussion where I invite other members of the, of the audience. I've seen my brother, Mr. Tosin, who was just joining us here, unfortunately, quite late. Maybe he can just, share like what he does, and before maybe we close. Mr. Tosin, the floor is yours. Just a brief introduction to what you do and everything.
All right, it's such a pleasure to be in here. My name is Tosin Olomu, and I am the founder of the Entrepreneurs Lodge podcast and the media company. And a bunch of what I do revolves around the conversations around entrepreneurship, career development, personal development, business, as well as leadership. Also, it's a joy to be here because APVA has granted me access to very bright minds, and I'm excited and honored to be here to share of the little knowledge that I have upstairs in my head, and to be of impact. I'm hopeful that this is gonna be something that would spark and ignite conversations that would change generations and help other people be better, and as well as take the right steps to living the best lives that they can live. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Over to you, sir.
Okay, for the interest of time, I'll just let you answer this question, Mr. Tosin, quite briefly. How do you think the African creative can use their work to promote the African narrative, in your opinion?
Okay, so one of the things I had learned, and when I did my research about the conversation for today, some of the things that caught my attention is the fact that for us to actually, you know, create a different narrative of the African continent as content creators, one of the first things we need to identify has to do with collaboration. And that is global collaboration. And even when on my way out earlier today, I'd seen a banner of an event that was called or themed Global Transformation, no, Global Collaboration, Local Transformation. And I think that resonates a lot with me, and especially this point I'm trying to make, because what I have seen over the last decade is that there's a lot of collaboration that happens outside of Africa. People are doing a lot of things to, change and create effect change around the globe. But what I see is Africa and Africans are doing their best, only that it is still within the confines of Africa, and it's not able to touch base with other parts of the world. Whereas if you can have as much global collaboration where Africans are boldly and confidently stepping out into the world and saying, this is what I have as an innovation, as an idea. This is how we can benefit the world. I need this set of people, or people from this region that will be willing to help me, or will be willing to be a part of the success of this. I think that is one way where we can rewrite the narrative of Africa, because Africans over the last century has been defined by other people that are not Africans. And that is because, they see us one way. But the way we see ourselves and what we know of ourselves is barely communicated to other parts of the world. So in this case, I have a strong belief that if we can have very solid, firm collaborations with other parts of the globe, they will begin to see the lights that actually exist within Africa, and understand better when we decide to now represent ourselves and say boldly that this is who we are as Africans. The message would easily be accepted, would we would break the barriers without too many hard work. And at the same time, I strongly believe that that way we won't have to worry too much about how we are represented, because we already know that these other parts of the world, they know who we are because they've seen it firsthand. And the best way for them to see it firsthand, it's not just for them to, some people can come into Africa, see some things, and still go outside of Africa and tell a different story entirely. But if we can seize that opportunity where we have them come, not just because they want to come and see what is going on, but because we have them come and collaborate with us here in Africa, then there is no one who would tell a lie or a different story about Africa. And definitely that way we would be able to, you know, give a narrative that is of our own intention. And I think that's like one answer that I would like to really give a global collaboration.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Thank you so much, Tosin, for your point of view and joining us and being part of our discussion. I want to thank my panelists, Juliana and Tosin, again. I want to thank APVA for providing us this platform and this amazing discussion. I want to thank Mr. Fred for the audience for joining us and everyone who has made this possible. And thank you so much.